A massive fire at an oil depot near the Black Sea resort of Sochi has been blamed by Russia on a Ukrainian drone attack. It was one of a series of strikes on Russian military infrastructure this weekend. Meanwhile, a number of Ukrainian cities have been struck by Russian missiles.
Hearing drones in the sky and gunfire on the ground, residents in the city of Samara start filming. When a fuel tank at an oil refinery is hit. This was one of several Ukrainian drone strikes launched over the weekend, targeting installations across the south of Russia. A massive fire was also caused at an oil depot near the Black Sea resort of Sochi, causing nearby flights to be cancelled.
At exactly 2 a.m., Ukraine launched 361 drones toward Russia in the most precisely coordinated strike of this entire war. The target? The Kurishi oil refinery, a single facility that refined 6% of Russia's total oil production. In just 3 hours, that number would drop to zero. But here's what makes this attack absolutely insane. Only 2 drones actually made it through Russia's supposedly impenetrable air defense network. Just 2. And those 2 drones triggered a chain reaction so catastrophic that Russia denied it happened for days, while satellite imagery showed an inferno visible from space. Let me break down exactly how Ukraine pulled off one of the most sophisticated drone strikes in modern warfare history. At 01:47 hours, operators at a launch site in Ukraine prepared to strike a target 1,000 kilometers away in Russia's Leningrad region. At exactly 0200, the lead operator triggered the launch sequence from inside his moving vehicle. The first Beaver drone accelerated down its rail, wings flexing under the load, lifting off at 80 kilometers per hour. Every 15 seconds, another drone followed, banking northeast toward Russia. The operators were already 2 kilometers away, racing through forest roads with their headlights off, guided only by night vision. Behind them, the empty launch site waited for the inevitable Russian counterstrike. This same desperate race repeated at dozens of locations across Ukraine. Farm fields in Sumy, where operators launched from hidden bunkers, highway rest stops near Chernihiv, where trucks revealed hidden rails, factory rooftops in Kharkiv, where maintenance crews were actually drone teams. 361 drones launching in a precisely timed sequence. Here's what made this coordination remarkable. The Kurishi package, those 35 drones heading for the refinery, was actually launching last, despite having the furthest to fly. This backward planning meant all 361 would arrive within the same 20-minute window. Moscow, Bryansk, Smolensk, Rostov, Kurishi all would face simultaneous attack. Russian air defense commanders would have to choose what to protect. Russian pilot radars in occupied Donetsk detected the launches within seconds. The data flowed instantly into Russia's integrated air defense network. Computers in Moscow began calculating intercept solutions. Fighter pilots across western Russia ran to their aircraft, but they were about to discover their entire defense doctrine had a fatal flaw. Russia built their air defense to stop American B-2 bombers worth $2 billion. Their S-400 missiles cost $5 million each. Their fighters burned $10,000 of fuel per hour. But these Beaver drones, they cost $50,000 to build. Fire a $5 million missile at a $50,000 drone? You're losing. Let it through and risk a $1 billion refinery? You're losing. Every option meant losing. And the engine powering this strategic weapon? A Chinese 2-stroke you can order online tonight for $500. It produces 6.5 horsepower burning regular gasoline, giving exactly 1,600 kilometers of range. Ukraine didn't develop exotic military technology. They took hobby shop parts and turned them into strategic weapons that Russia's billion-dollar systems couldn't stop. At 0245, the Kurishi package reached the Belarusian border. 35 drones peeled north. Threading between Belarusian defenses and Russian interceptors, the package immediately split into what Ukraine calls a ladder formation. The Mugen 5 decoys climbed to 3,000 meters, deliberately broadcasting on known drone control frequencies. They wanted to be seen, tracked, and engaged. At $30,000 each, their job was to die first and save the mission. The UJ-22s leveled at 1,500 meters, taking the middle tier. Their role? Take missiles from Buk and Tor systems straight to the face, forcing the Russians to run out of ammunition. The Beaver strikers dove to 50 meters, disappearing into what radar operators call ground clutter. At this altitude, radar beams bounce off everything: trees, buildings, vehicles, creating electronic noise that hides small targets. Plus, the Earth's curvature helps. helps. At 50 meters altitude, a drone vanishes from ground radar beyond 30 kilometers. Here's why this formation was genius. Each altitude band defeated a different Russian defense layer. High-altitude decoys would trigger the S-400s and S-300s. Middle-altitude drones would pull fire from tactical systems. The low beavers would slip through the gap between these layers. At 0400, the package approached Tikhvin, 200 kilometers from Kurishi. The S-300's radar, the infamous cheese grater, began tracking them. This radar seemed unbeatable. It frequency hops across the X-band 100 times per second. You can't jam it because by the time you react, it's already moved. But Ukraine had discovered its fatal flaw. Every 10 seconds, the system must recalibrate its frequency hopping sequence. For exactly 500 milliseconds, it stops transmitting. Half a second of blindness every 10 seconds. One Mugen 5 climbed to 5,000 meters, deliberately triggering the radar. The S-300 engaged immediately, a $3 million missile against a $50,000 drone. But in the 2 seconds before impact, the doomed drone transmitted the radar's timing pattern to the swarm. Its destruction provided the synchronization data they desperately needed. When the radar entered its reset gap, the remaining drones dove to 10 meters altitude. For half a second, they were invisible. The swarm had slipped through during the blindness window, but they'd just entered Russia's electronic warfare zone. The Pol-21 system activated, recording real GPS signals and rebroadcasting them with delays. The drone's receivers showed them over empty fields when they were actually over cities. But the Beaver switched to backup navigation, counting power line crossings. Each major transmission line between the border and Kurishi was a waypoint. The drones were literally navigating by counting infrastructure that couldn't be spoofed. At 0600, Kurishi's lights became visible. 4 Pantsir batteries protected it. The 20 remaining UJ-22s split into 5 groups of 4, each targeting a different Pantsir. The operators faced an impossible choice. Their systems could track all 20 drones, but each battery could only engage 4. Those 4 missiles would need 15 seconds to reach their targets. During those 15 seconds, they couldn't engage anything else. 16 missiles launched simultaneously. 12 UJ-22s went down in spectacular fireballs, their sacrifice buying precious seconds. Because while those missiles flew their 15-second journeys, the Beaver strikers sprinted through the gap. By the time the missiles impacted, the strikers were inside minimum range. The Pantsers switched to their twin 30mm cannons. But Ukraine had programmed random altitude changes every 2 seconds, up 10 meters, down 5, up 3, down 8. No pattern for the computer to learn. 3 Beavers flew into tungsten clouds and disintegrated. 6 Beavers cleared the cannon envelope at 500 meters from the refinery. They'd broken through. But Russia had one last card. The Derivatsia PVO, Russia's newest close-in weapon system, sat near the main gate. Its 57mm autocannon was already tracking the incoming drones. This system fires shells with programmable fuses. A laser rangefinder measures exact distance to each target, then programs every shell as it leaves the barrel. Each explosion spreads 200 tungsten balls in a 10-meter sphere, but the designers had built in a fatal safety protocol. Below 100 meters altitude, the tungsten spheres could hit the refinery itself. The safety lockout was hard-coded. No manual override, even in combat. The lead Beaver tried to dive, but its damaged controls responded slowly. The third shell detonated 8 meters away. The drone's plywood frame shredded instantly. The second drone reached 120 meters altitude. At 110 meters, still firing. At 105 meters, one more shell. At 100 meters exactly, the system stopped. The barrel froze in position. The computer had decided protecting the refinery from friendly fire outweighed stopping 2 drones. Big mistake. At 0619, the first Beaver struck the CDU-100 junction exactly where intelligence indicated. Crude oil at 380 degrees Celsius and 30 atmospheres pressure erupted from ruptured lines. The superheated liquid hit air and vaporized, a fuel-air explosion that propagated through the entire complex. 10 seconds later, the second drone hit Tank 47. The accumulated vapors ignited instantly. The floating roof became a 50-ton projectile. 80,000 barrels of petroleum now had no cover, feeding an exponentially growing inferno. Secondary explosions ripped outward. 6 storage tanks ruptured simultaneously. Emergency systems tried isolating sections, but the damage was too widespread. The Kurishi refinery, 355,000 barrels per day, 6.4% of Russia's capacity, was destroying itself from within. This is modern warfare, where a $500 engine and hobby shop parts can defeat billion-dollar defense systems. Ukraine just proved that precision and coordination matter more than raw firepower. Russia can claim victory all they want, but satellites don't lie. That inferno burning for days? That was 6% of their oil capacity going up in smoke. If you want to see more breakdowns of how this war is actually being fought, hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment below telling me what strike you want me to cover next.